Hello, thank you for joining us for our School Breakfast Creative Breakfast Service Models webinar. It's presented today by Action for Healthy Kids. My name is Ellen Dillon. I'm Regional Field Manager for Action for Healthy Kids. I've been working with schools all across the country on school breakfast since about 2009 and have worked with districts as well as schools to help increase breakfast participation. Just some basic logistics so that you're aware. Everyone is either but choosing to be on the webinar by telephone. You can call in, or by speakers. You're just going to click on the audiograph to use whichever manner you'd like to listen. You can choose whatever works best for you. You will be muted by default. So if you have a question, we love your questions. Go ahead and type those into that question box on the right-hand panel. That way, during the webinar, we'll be able to have a few minutes to answer your questions after each of our speakers and again at the end. The webinar is being recorded, and we will be following up with this within 2 business days. So probably by Friday at the very latest, you should receive the recording as well as any other information of note that was referenced during the webinar. And you will get those in an email to you from Action for Healthy Kids. So as I mentioned, my name is Ellen Dillon. I'm a Regional Field Manager for Action for Healthy Kids. We're joined today by Marie Dittmer. She's with Northeast ISD in San Antonio, Texas. We have Wendy Caudill. She's also from Texas with Austin Independent School District. And we have Janet Barth with Morongo Unified School District in sunny Southern California. And each of them will be sharing about some of their experiences related to some different breakfast programs. But first, let me tell you a little bit about who Action for Healthy Kids is, in case you don't know us.
Ellen, Hey, Ellen, yes. We can't see your screen yet.
Oh, goodness.
There you go.
That helps. My apologies. I was so excited to get started. So let me just move back real quick and make sure everyone knows where they are to be putting in their questions as well as to hear the program. You'll be able to do that on the right-hand panel with either using telephone or speakers. All right. Thank you, Carol, for letting us know. And we have Carol Muller, who is our Colorado Field Manager, who will be answering questions for us on the back end. So as I mentioned, Action for Healthy Kids, if you don't know us, we are fighting childhood obesity, undernourishment, and physical inactivity by helping schools become healthier places. For moms, dads, teachers, students, school and community leaders, and school wellness experts who have banded together to create healthy learning environments for our children. We believe that everyone has a part to play in ending the nation's childhood obesity epidemic. Our programs, tools, and resources make that possible. We were founded in 2002 by the former Surgeon General David Thatcher. Today we have more than 60,000 members. We're also partners with dozens of professional associations, government agencies, and corporations at the national and local level. If you haven't already seen our Learning Connection report, I highly suggest you download it and take a look at it. In terms of school breakfast, it will really support the work that you are doing related to helping to feed more children. And the things that you know at your school is that students that have a school breakfast are more focused in school, they have better classroom behaviors, and their focus and concentration and memory are improved. And it's related to improved mathematics, reading, and writing test scores. So you can find out more information here using this link on the webinar. So here is our agenda for today. We're going to start off by reviewing some ideal breakfast models, and we can call them model breakfast models. But some schools can't always offer those models of breakfast service. And so then we're going to hear about some different programs that are going on in Northeast ISD. We're going to hear about Second Chance Breakfast. We'll have late arrival breakfast from Austin ISD, and then we'll hear about breakfast off the bus in Morongo. We're not saying that these are the only creative service models. We know that there are lots of them out there. But we wanted to just highlight a few and talk about how you can incorporate some of these creative models in your school. Before we get started too much, I'm going to do a quick poll, and we want to see if you are currently offering an alternative model for school breakfast. So if you could just go ahead and vote if it's yes or no, we can get an idea about how the audience right now. It's looking pretty evenly split. I'll give you now 10 more seconds. All right, so pretty evenly split. About 47% are saying yes, that you are offering an alternative model, and about no is about 53%. So that means it tells us that either you're interested in knowing more, or perhaps you're ready to maybe change a model. But the biggest thing to understand about alternative models, it means that it's moving breakfast from the cafeteria before the bell. We know that having the breakfast in the cafeteria before the bell rings is a challenge. There's so many issues getting kids into the cafeteria, whether it be time, where the cafeteria is located, the stigma that might be associated with students going to the cafeteria to get breakfast because it's considered that only maybe the free and reduced or the poor kids, quote unquote, are eating breakfast. There could be other situations where maybe the cafeteria is really small. I've been in some schools where there's no way they could serve all the kids. Even if they wanted to and the kids wanted to come in, they couldn't physically get all those kids in the cafeteria. So there's lots of challenges with cafeteria before the bell. And ideally speaking, we would love to see that all schools are able to offer breakfast at no charge. And that could be through a universal breakfast program, excuse me, community eligibility provision, or some other opportunity to offer breakfast at no charge. But not every school is able to do that. But what we do see is that the highest participation tends to be when you are offering breakfast to the classroom after the start of the day, and that's normally heard of and known as breakfast in the classroom. So in an ideal world, we would like to see that there's breakfast which is served after the bell. It's either delivered to the classroom with the breakfast in the classroom. It's a grab and go to the classroom. It could be that students are picking up from a grab-and-go station, or maybe they're getting it from the cafeteria, but they're allowed to bring it to their classroom. These are probably the highest participation models that we see across the board and across the country. And there's also grab-and-go, and maybe they're eating it in some other location in the school. We also sometimes will see reimbursable vending, and that tends to be something that might take place in higher grades, secondary schools, high schools, as another freedom that students may have. It could be in all kinds of schools, you know, in terms of more affluent schools where it's something that kids find as being more of a freedom that they would have, and so they're willing to pay for that breakfast service, and so that reimbursable vending is another option. But with an alternative model, the biggest things are things that you have to think about regarding logistics. Are you able to transport the food to the classroom or have a kiosk in a location that is a high traffic location? Because if you're putting it in some place where the kids can't get to near the cafeteria that might be on the other side of the school, that doesn't always create high participation. You might need technology incorporated. So if you're doing a grab and go, you're often going to need some type of wireless technology or capabilities to create a point-of-sale computer system and in different locations. And often with an increase in participation means an increase in storage. You need to have more milk storage. You need to have more locations where you can store your different food items that you're having come in, or maybe you're having more deliveries of food items because you're having greater participation. So those are some logistic things that you have to think about. You also need equipment. So when we think about breakfast in the classroom, we need to have some type of insulated bags to keep cold food cold and warm foods warm, some way of transporting these items. I love the radio flyer that's being used in a school here in Kentucky, where the kids are pulling those carts through and delivering to the classroom. Or perhaps you need a kiosk or cart where students are able to pick up their breakfast, their grab-and-go bags, and move it and take it to their classroom. I've seen schools be able to repurpose their salad bars to be able to use this rather than have to purchase a new cart or kiosk for grab-and-go. So being really creative with what you have available to you is important. Also, you'll need portable milk coolers if you're going to do a grab-and-go in a location other than your cafeteria, and some types of disposable bags to carry and to collect trash and things like that. But the key is that you're going to need stakeholder buy-in. No matter what program you're going to incorporate, you're going to need the support of those in the school. You're going to need support from your custodial staff in terms of how to do cleanup, how to dispose of items, if you're going to allow students to eat in the classroom or in the halls or in the courtyard. You're going to need to have a plan in place on how to clean up, as well as a plan in place for training teachers in terms of recording breakfast items if you're offering breakfast in the classroom. Principal support is probably the biggest key and is vital to your buy-in, and to no matter what you're doing is getting that principal support. And what we're going to see today is about being flexible, because not every school will have a program that will look exactly the same. And in districts, whether they have 100 schools or 20 schools or 4 schools, every school is different. Every principal controls things a little differently. Every staff is a little bit different. And so being able to listen to the needs of the school is key, and then being able to be flexible and design a program that meets that school's needs. So while Action for Healthy Kids and many of our national partners, whether it be Fuel Up to Play 60 in Dairy, or Share Our Strength and the No Kid Hungry campaign, or Food Research and Action Center, or Partners for Breakfast in the Classroom, everyone that's involved with school breakfast recognizes that the best models have to do with breakfast in the classroom or grab and go to the classroom. But we also know not every school is equipped or ready to take on those models. So what we're going to hear about today are some different models and how they've worked in schools around the country. I'm going to pause for just a second. Carol, did you have any questions that you want to go ahead and get answered now?
No, nothing has come in yet, so I think we're good to go.
All right, super. Before I get moving into our examples, here are a couple of that I wanted to share. We don't have speakers talking about these, but I did mention the reimbursable vending machines. Here's a picture of one that took place. This is in Cincinnati, Ohio, that's using reimbursable vending machines in many of their high schools. The pros is that students can choose the items that they want for their breakfast. It gives them a lot of freedom. It can be placed in different locations. These machines can be expensive, though. I think they're around $14,000 a piece, and you're kind of limited in how many meals you can put in each one. But sometimes they can be restocked depending upon how you're using them. So we do see that they can be successful. We also know that in some locations, we can use a breakfast on the bus. This works in locations where students are spending a lot of time on the bus in the morning. And it could be because they have a large distance to travel, and they're getting up very early. And so rather than having the breakfast at the school, they're having them on the bus. So what it does, it requires a lot of coordination between transportation and food service, and often they're picking up either early morning and putting the food carts on the bus, or they're working it in the night before and then storing it on the bus. So it really does require creativity in that case, and coordination. So we're going to begin with Northeast ISD, which is in San Antonio, Texas, and Marie Dittmar, who is an area supervisor with School Nutrition Services. And she's going to tell us about her Second Chance Breakfast program. Marie?
Okay, thank you. I began this program, projected this program several years ago kind of for a selfish reason. My son was playing football in high school, and he was taking the oversized Little Debbie's oatmeal cakes to school, and I asked him about it. He said, "That's my breakfast, Mom, because by the time we get done with practice, breakfast is over, and I don't want to eat before I go to practice." So I approached my director and to ask her if I could look into starting something. And she said, I was hoping for 30 minutes, and she said, well, see what you can get. So I approached the coach, and it just so happened that the athletes had a 30-minute study hall at the end of their class period, and they were congregating in the cafeteria for a study hall. And so then the next person I needed to approach was the principal. So I went to the principal and said, studies show that students with a nutritious breakfast have better test scores, fewer behavior problems, all of the verbiage that the principals like to hear. And he gave his okay. Pardon? He gave his okay with his only concern was the cleanup in the cafeteria. And the coach said, I'll take care of that. Don't worry about that. So we began this program about 10 years ago. And at that time, it was not during a breakfast service time. The students didn't come in until 10. So all of our sales were strictly a la carte. But we would bring in between $250 and $300 a day within that 30-minute time frame. And with that, it gave us an opportunity to be able to hire another person, which the school got the benefit of 6 hours of labor from what actually we only added, probably with making the extra food and everything, about 2 hours worth of labor. But then in the 2010-2011 school year, the schedule was changed, and the Second Chance Breakfast came about during the actual breakfast service time. So from 2010 to current, we have been serving our students between 9:15 and 9:30 in the cafeteria, and our meals have increased anywhere between 1,000 and 1,100 meals a day. Per month in that time, and we still have a la carte sales ranging between $250 and $300. One thing that I was looking at also, this is a very low free and reduced school. It's only about 12% free and reduced. So we were needing ways to increase our revenue there to offset the other cost. And it's been a very popular addition to the high school. As I said, it's right there in the cafeteria. It allows us to cut down on our leftovers, because what we're planning for the first breakfast we carry over to the second breakfast, and that's what we did when we first initiated, even when it was all a la carte sales. Any of the leftover items for breakfast we would sell a la carte during that time. But it has helped the needs, to help satisfy the needs of the students there. They're primarily athletes, but it's anyone who comes into the cafeteria and wants to purchase a meal. We don't question where they're coming from. We provide the meal for them, and it has helped with the that service. And the parents that I have spoken to have really appreciated that service, and we're hoping to maybe even expand it, maybe to adding a cart in another area. We've just added on to that school, and I've been informed that there's another area that the students are coming into. But this is what we did with the second chance breakfast.
Great, Marie. There's some questions that I know that always kind of crop up around a second chance breakfast related to I guess the amount of time and working with principals to either allow that time in between a couple of periods, and usually maybe right after homeroom or right after a first period. Did you have any of that when you first were presenting this? Was there already that break in your day?
Actually, when we started this was actually the last 15 minutes of the first period. And as I said, ours are primary athletes. It can be football, baseball, swimming, soccer, whatever sports are going on. And I did speak to one of the band parents the other day, and she said that the band also has those rehearsals. And I said, well, have them come in. So this was kind of built into the schedule. We're just kind of tapping into that time that was already built kind of as a buffer time for the athletes to come in and shower and be ready to go to their next period class. And so we just kind of bumped into that time. So this is not any additional time that we ask the principal for.
Gotcha. In terms of, you mentioned that you had a relatively low free and reduced, which we know, when we're talking about schools that have low free and reduced, being able to, being creative and meet the needs of the students will help to increase participation, and whether they're from paying students or free and reduced students, it helps to remove maybe some of the stigma that might be related to the free and reduced students participating. Do you have any feeling as to, did the students increase in terms of those students that were the free and reduced students?
As far, I'm not understanding your question.
Did the free and reduced students also increase? I know you're talking about the paying students.
Right. Yeah. We would get between 10 and 15 free students that would come in, but we don't have that high. I'm trying to get my information to find out. I think we only have about 100 or 120 free students. So we're probably only getting about 10% of the free, but I'm totaling up some of my information from this year. I'm just now getting to it from the beginning of the year. Last year I would hit maybe 5 or 6 free students, and what I'm looking at now, I'm getting between 10 and 12 every day. So that participation is coming up. And the reduced, I would only get about 2, and what I'm seeing now so far, I'm getting about 4 or 5. So that participation is coming up, but it's not anywhere near where it could be yet.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes just being able to make it easier to get, and then approaching more students to participate. We have a question from a school that has lunch pretty early in the day. So did you have any issue when it came to how much time was between your breakfast service and your lunch service?
When I first started this, well, there was the service was from 10 to 10:30, and we didn't start lunch until about 12:15. And now it's about the same thing. This service ends about 9:30, and lunch starts about 11:20. So there's about 2 hours in between the end of the breakfast time and the beginning of lunch service.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead. Thanks. And if you have any more questions for Maria in the Second Chance Breakfast, go ahead and enter them into the question box, and we'll go ahead and make sure we get to those towards the end. Thank you, Marie. And next we're going to hear from Wendy Caudill, who's the area supervisor with Austin ISD in Texas. And with her is Lindsay Bradley, who is the marketing specialist for Austin ISD as well. And they are together. So Wendy and Lindsay, we're going to hear about your late arrival breakfast.
Right. Thank you for including us. We're excited to present. We decided we have a lot of campuses that do BIC, breakfast in the classroom, and we all know that that's definitely the most effective approach, to getting the kids to eat breakfast. But we did have some campuses that the principal, you mentioned in the previous presentation that you have to gain the buy-in of the principal, and that is crucial when you're dealing with breakfast in the classroom and different models. So we had a couple of campuses that the principals were very adamantly against breakfast in the classroom. So we decided, how could we capture all the kids, with a varied model? So we developed two different models. One is on the cart grab and go, and this purpose of this model was to not allow the kids the opportunity. This is the late children, the kids that were coming in late. This was to not allow the opportunity for them to come in late, go to the cafeteria, dilly-dally in the cafeteria, and then lose some vital classroom directional time. So that principal really wanted to focus on how can we capture all of our kids. These two campuses that we're doing are high, free, and reduced. So we already capture a lot, but we wanted to get to 100%. So what we did for the on the cart grab and go is my ladies would set up, it's offer versus serve, so two choices of the breakfast in a sack lunch bag on a cart as the kids would come in the front door of the school. They would grab a lunch and go straight to the classroom and eat. Over the breakfast increased about 20 to 28 servings a day, okay? But over a period of time, this particular principal noticed that the distraction in the classroom that was occurring with the children that had a meal versus those that didn't was very it was very distracting to all the kids in the classroom, which of course would be a reason for us to go to breakfast in the classroom at that school. But this principal is also adamantly against the waste or trash and potential pest issues you might come across with eating in the classroom. So since we implemented on the cart grab and go, we have now kind of altered that model to letting the kids come in. The late children now go to the cafeteria and they eat in the cafeteria and they come to the classroom a little bit later. That seems to work for her. We're working hard on trying to convert that campus to a BIC because all those kids at that school could really benefit from BIC. Our next model is what we call an on-the-line grab and go. And that model, the child comes in, they go to the office, they get a late pass, they go into the cafeteria, go through the line as if they normally would for breakfast. The cafeteria ladies bag up their choice, they take the sack lunch and go to the classroom and eat in the classroom, and that seems to be working beautifully at that particular campus. Again, these are two campuses that we're hoping to, implement VIC. So this was kind of our segue to the principal to kind of see how far we can go with, getting them a little bit more interested in the breakfast in the classroom. But at both campuses, breakfast participation did increase, and I mean, as we know, what you've mentioned previously is that it increases, the learning abilities for the children for sure. And that sums it up.
Well, I appreciate the things that you shared in terms of the fact that, like you said, in an ideal world, we would have gotten them into breakfast in the classroom, but maybe this was your segue. But sometimes you know that even though you had somewhat similar models where the students were going to the classroom, one school it was working well, and the other school it wasn't so much. So, and sometimes it's, the expectations that are placed on the students by administrators, teachers, custodial staff, food service, it all fits nicely and neatly, and everybody just follows along. And then at another school, somewhere along the line, something doesn't get communicated the same way or with the same expectation and sense of responsibility, and it doesn't work the same. So,
right.
You described it perfectly that, you have to listen to your principals because if they're not going to like it and it's not working for them, you can't force it either because it's not going to work.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, one of the things I was going to mention on the one that we had the cart, the grab and go, on the cart grab and go, I thought it was interesting that the principal's dislike was that the children eating breakfast were distracting to the other children. And to me, that was a perfect opportunity, and I did say, well, if all children were eating in the classroom, then we wouldn't have this distraction. So I'm slowly but surely trying to kind of nudge that principal in the direction. But you're right, you've got to have the buy-in, or else you're set up to fail, and ultimately the student loses in that case, and that's never our goal. So.
Yes, absolutely. And like it says here on the screen, it's not the child's fault normally that they're late. And so, to penalize them or make it punitive where they can't eat isn't going to serve anyone and make it successful for the student in terms of their day, setting them up for really failure at that point. So it's nice to see that, you're able to kind of find ways to meet the needs of the students. You already had high participation in the cafeteria before the day, and they just needed to grab these students that were arriving just a bit later. Well, let's just do a quick check. There was a couple of questions related to breakfast in the classroom. Wendy, would you mind if we ask you one of these questions, and then maybe we'll throw it out to the group towards the end? How do you make sure that your items are the proper temperature in terms of when you're delivering breakfast to the classroom?
Well, in my territory, I don't have any of my schools that are participating in breakfast in the classroom currently, but I should have brought my breakfast in the classroom guru with me. But I can answer to the best of my ability. There are two different containers. We have various containers that we pack the food up that does ensure, they're insulated containers that ensures that the temperature does stay to temp. And that's something that we've kind of played around with different types of bags and packaging.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of this person has commented that leftover milk, for example, has to be tossed because it hasn't stayed at the consistent temperature or the proper temperature. Do you find that you don't have to do that and that you can either repurpose it for lunch service or put it into another location for sale or breakfast the next day?
What we encourage our cafeteria ladies to do is take the temperature of some of the milk that is left. It depends how long the milk and if what was the cooling apparatus in the milk container that it was held in. But we definitely will repurpose if the milk stays in temp. If it does not, then we dispose of it.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So maybe this person needs to find either a different container or timing better in their breakfast returns and when it goes out, making sure it stays the right temperature. And then
right.
in terms of your second, or not so much your second chance, your late arrival breakfast, about how much did it increase your participation?
About 20 to 28 meals a day at both sites.
Okay. And so is that, in terms of the size of the school, and those were students that wouldn't normally have been participating because they're coming in late? Okay, great.
Right.
Let's just do a quick check to see if there are any other questions that we can get out here. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. Thanks, Wendy and Lindsay.
Sure, thank you.
And as she mentioned, these were some of the key learnings that she talked about. Next, we're going to hear from Janet Barth. She's the Director of Nutritional Services at Morongo USD in Southern California. And she's going to tell us about her experience with breakfast at the bus or off the bus. Janet.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Janet Barth, and I am with Morongo Unified School District. Let me tell you just a little bit about our district. We have an enrollment of about 8,200 kids, and we have 5 secondary schools, 11 elementary schools, and 4 alternative schools. Our district is 60 miles from one end to the other, so kids spend a lot of time on the bus before they get to school, and our free and reduced percentage rate is approximately 64%. So what we wanted to do was find a way to capture the students who didn't have time or want to give up their social time to cross campus to participate in the breakfast program. So at our high schools, we found that kids, of course, didn't want to go to one end of the campus and then go back to their classes. So we thought we needed to go ahead and find a way to reach all these students. So what we decided to do was offer breakfast off the bus. And what we did is we set up kiosks or tables or whatever we had at that campus right where the buses come off and the kids get off of the bus, so that kids could grab a sack lunch. They could still socialize while they were walking towards class, while they're eating their muffin or their banana or things like that. So I just want to talk about a couple of the challenges we faced. In preparing for the program, we had to purchase carts and wireless computers, and of course then set up everything so it looked friendly for the kids to want to come and eat breakfast. Our first challenge was our computers. We bought wireless computers that we thought were going to be awesome. They were lightweight. It was something that the kids could use easily by putting in their number. We sent them to our IT department, and they weren't compatible with our programs. So that kind of set us back. We had to return the computers. It took about 5 or 6 weeks for the new computers to arrive, but we did get them all set up at the buses. We got excited. We advertised, we're starting this new program for all these kids, and then the wireless technology didn't work. Although the schools have wireless technology, it wasn't at the bus area. So that set us back a little bit further. We still went ahead and served, but unfortunately, then we had some duplicate meals because we had kids that ate there at the bus and then went into the kitchen and ate there as well. So, that kind of took us back just a little bit. So the last challenge that we had was by having one of our people from the kitchen going out to where the buses were, there was only one person left in the kitchen to serve. So the kids that were coming to the cafeteria where they had more choices, it was a slower line. So our need was to have someone at both places, and unfortunately our funding didn't allow that. But on the bright side, the kids are eating more breakfast. Our participation has increased about 17% at those schools, and as long as the budget allows, we would definitely, you know, tell anyone to give this a try.
So in terms of the successes, then, were you able to then just to move the carts a bit closer, but in still a higher traffic area, or how did you operate your carts at that point?
Well, we kept it farther out, but then we just had to go back into the office and see if anyone had done duplicate meals, and then we would go ahead and take one of them off and make it as a second meal so that it didn't count for reimbursement. And of course, call that student in and just let them know that they could only eat one. Another way, at one school, they only stayed at the busing area a certain amount of time, and then they went back into the cafeteria and served there as well.
Mm-hmm. And that resolves your staffing issue.
Well, I would say that we still need an extra person. We just, at this point, don't have the funding for that.
Right, right. And that brings a good point. I think it was mentioned earlier that with increased participation, they were able to hire another staffer to help with their service, and that's the goal, is that with increased participation, you'll have enough funding coming in to support bringing on additional staff to support the breakfast program.
Exactly.
In terms of your menu options, so you mentioned, this question kind of came through earlier about more choices for those students that were coming into the cafeteria. Did you just have one choice then at the carts, or how did you operate that?
At the carts, we had two choices of the main dish, and then we had already bagged up all of the side dishes to go with it. So they only got to choose the main dish, and there was always two choices. In the cafeteria, we offer 7 or 8 choices. And so at the bus, we only offered cold choices, but in the kitchen, you were able to get hot choices.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, super. And I'm just checking to see if we have any other questions. And in terms of where students are allowed to eat, are they allowed to take their breakfast to their classrooms?
You know, there was never any real discussion about that because our school district as a whole doesn't allow food in the classroom, although we do have one school that has breakfast in the classroom. But I believe there wasn't anything said, you know, if they didn't get finished before it was actually class time, I believe they didn't give them any problems.
Gotcha. So did you have to make sure you had more garbage cans and receptacles along the way to make sure trash was disposed of?
No, we didn't have to increase that at all. Our district is set up pretty much with trash cans everywhere. Being out in the desert, you know, the kids bring a lot of water and things like that, so there's always trash cans available.
Great. All right. All right. We're going to so what type of food choices are you offering on the carts outside of the buses?
Generally, we offered cold items, which could have been mini donuts, Pop-Tarts, honey breakfast bars, yogurt with string cheese, things that I could keep in a cool insulated bag without having to maintain a hot temperature.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and, do you have any idea of what percentage of the students come in on the buses? You know, some districts and some schools are, you know, pretty much all bused in or parent drop-offs. Do you have any idea what?
The majority of our students are bused in. Like I mentioned, we're 60 miles from one end to the other. So while parents do bring some of the kids, and it being in the high school, some of them drive their own self, the majority of the kids do come through the busing.
Gotcha. Great. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on and just talk a little bit about, as we've gone through, we've answered most of the questions, and if there was a question that didn't get answered, we'll follow up with you directly or in the wrap-up. I did want to mention that one of the things that has come up is the need to pay for either the equipment or some of the things around the programming. Action for Healthy Kids has just launched its grants for 2016-17, and we have universal and alternative grants with $5,000 for our year one grants and the opportunity to provide additional funding over the next 2 years, so a total of 3 years of funding to help move a school to 85% ADP. Not all schools are qualified to or able to offer universal breakfast. We find that most schools that are in that 60% or greater free and reduced, or those that are choosing to offer community eligibility provisions, for example, but it also needs to include an alternative model. So maybe one of these models that were discussed today, or moving right to a breakfast in the classroom or grab and go to the classroom would be the most ideal situation to apply and receive those grants. And we also have a district alternative grant, which provides $2,100 per school to 10 or more schools within a district. The goal is to impact participation by 35% or more increase, and in addition to funding, schools also receive technical assistance with site visits and training for the food service director and or project lead for those 10 schools. So, maybe depending upon your needs at your school or your plans for the coming year, thinking about how you're going to pay for it is always important, and if we can help, we're also willing and able to do that with you. Just want to launch another poll real quick before we get too far towards wrapping up. Oh, I lost my poll. All right, so let's see. So if you were going to offer alternative breakfast, what do you perceive to be your biggest barrier to offering an alternative breakfast? If you can go ahead. Three more seconds. All right, so it looks like in terms of those that are maybe going to launch an alternative breakfast, startup cost isn't the biggest concern, is that principal support. So, finding those resources to support swaying your principals is really key. Thinking about what you can do to create buy-in, working with your local hunger organizations in your state, finding resources related to your program and being able to share, using the Learning Connection. I think everybody mentioned that they talked about the fact that students did better in school and test scores, attended school more frequently, had fewer behavior issues, had less visits to the nurse. All of those things mean that kids are sitting in the classroom and they're able to attend to the task of learning rather than focus on being hungry. So really thinking about what you might need to share with your principal might be just a little bit different than what you're going to need to share with custodians or food service staffing constraints. So thinking about how you can best message to your principals. I'm going to just throw that question out to the group, and whether anybody can just chime in. In your history of working with principals and getting them buying in on whether it be breakfast in the classroom or grab and go or some other change to the normal breakfast service, what are some things that have worked for you in working with principals?
I could answer that. This is Janet. One of the things that were really important to us was the principal buy-in. And if you can just get one principal who's willing to support you, and they in turn get their teachers on board, by starting up one school, then other school districts or other schools in the district say, oh my gosh, I like what they're doing. And then they're more apt to support it as well. So it's really finding that champion principal that wants to support you.
Absolutely. I know that is usually the way many districts have started, is finding the one, and there's always one. You know, there's one that's more of a maverick. There's one that's more of a, I'll do whatever you need. You know, whatever's good for my kids, I'll make it happen. You know, whether it be you're going to a principal's meeting or it's, you know, your food service, your cafeteria managers are saying, I have that principal, and then talking to them and offering that opportunity, and then using them to kind of share out, because when things are going well and their test scores are improving, other principals are going to want to jump on board pretty quickly too after. Wendy or Marie, did you have anything more you wanted to add?
Yeah, this is Marie. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
What I found with starting in the high school with the athletes, it has dwindled down into the middle schools also, with the, I guess, the coaches talking about how receptive it was with their students, because the two middle schools that I also supervise, especially during football season, there's 2 or 3 days out of the week that we provide the meal for them also.
Yeah, and being able to, you know, as your participation increases and you might have discretionary dollars in your accounts, that you can use it to help pay for teachers or help pay for, you know, others that might be involved. You know, that really helps to create that buy-in. Wendy, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Janet said, that, yeah, finding that principal champion is key, providing them with education and making it as an easy of a transition as possible, and allowing them to see, you know, another successful program. And kind of, I think a lot of people are apprehensive when they're not educated on how something's going to work, and they automatically go to, okay, what am I going to need to do? You know, I've already got this kind of workload. What more am I going to have to do to make this work? And so ensuring that you and your staff create a seamless transition, I think, is key to the buy-in.
We had a couple of suggestions from our attendees. Somebody had mentioned, Dana had mentioned, using National School Breakfast Week as an opportunity to pilot during that week and show principals how it will work. You know, whatever it is that you're trying to do differently, you might be able to do it then. And that's a great idea. National School Breakfast Week is coming up first full week of March. So that might be, you know, might not work right now if you're not quite planned it, but, you know, you can do that at any point. I know a lot of school districts will use the month of May to kind of work out kinks in their program and then plan to fully implement at the start of the school year. We have a suggestion from Kylie, who said that they utilized, and I'm just going to read it off. We found that with the breakfast in the cafeteria, we start everyone in the cafeteria and eat family style. They've had less fights and less office visits. The one principal has started and loves it, and now we're moving that model to a few other schools. So being able to find something that's working and then duplicating it is key. It might look a little different. You know, we just talked about having different logistics and different school staff and needs of the school. It might just look a little different, but being able to take a model and duplicate it elsewhere is important. So we're going to go ahead and move towards wrapping up. I want to thank all of our speakers today. Here's the information on our grants, and you can find it on this website. And we'll also be having a webinar next Tuesday, that will give you more information if you're interested, and you can find this on our website as well. If you aren't following us on Facebook or Pinterest or Twitter, I encourage you to do so. We have lots of ideas, lots of suggestions to make your schools healthier places. We provide lots of opportunities to learn about webinars, really cool little ideas for teachers as well as parents to help make healthier parties. So lots of ideas to make your school a healthier place. So if you're not already following, I encourage you to do that. And if you haven't taken the pledge to make every kid healthy, we encourage you to do that as well. Your support is helping to make Action for Healthy Kids provide more opportunities for school programs, providing tools and resources, and opportunities to learn more about volunteer opportunities and school grants. So if you haven't done that, I encourage you to do that. That way you'll be the first to hear when our grants are available or any other information that might be helpful to you in your school. All right, we're going to wrap up today's webinar. If you need any information, you can always reach me at my email. And as I said, I manage our breakfast grants, and I'll be happy to assist you or at least help you find resources to help you make your program a success. And that's always our goal, is to feed more kids. So if you have any questions, just touch base with me. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Marie and Janet and Wendy and Lindsay for joining us as well and sharing about your schools. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.